Afternoon, good afternoon or good evening, good morning, depending where in the world you're joining us from today. And thank you for coming back online for this third and last online week. So third week in the online component of this blended course on access to decent work for refugees. We have a very exciting session ahead of us today, and it's a bit different from what you have seen so far. We are joined by three speakers, and the session is going to be separated into two components. So in the first part of the session today, we're going to focus on the importance of data on displacement and on the analysis of correct indicators. Based on that, so using that as a sort of a spark for our discussion, we're going to then move into the issue of how we can better support the development of evidence-based policies, not just by relying on statistical data, but also by promoting and strengthening as much as possible meaningful inclusion of refugee voices in the dedicated fora. So to do that today, as I said, we have three guest speakers. The first one is Grace Steffan from the UNHCR in Geneva, and I'm going to give you a little bit more background information shortly. Then we have Silsila Mahboub, who is a community manager in the Refugee Advisory Board, and Buhendwa Iragi, who is a research assistant at the Refugee-led Research Hub within the Refugee Study Center at the University of Oxford. So as usual, the session is being recorded, and the recording is going to be made available to you on the eCampus shortly after the session. So you can go back to it and review it and listen to it again if you wish. Any accompanying materials will also be posted on the eCampus, so background information, PowerPoint presentation. You will see that we will show a short video that will also be made available for you on the eCampus after the session in both languages, English and Arabic. Which brings me to the last point, that is the session is offered in English with simultaneous interpretation in Arabic. So if you need to switch languages, make sure to click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. Click on the English or the Arabic channel so that you can follow the session in the language that you prefer. For the English speakers among us, if any of the participants is going to make a contribution to the session in Arabic, you can also switch to the English channel so that you can hear the translation in English. So it goes both ways. Obviously, as usual, and you will be used to it by now, we try to keep our sessions as engaging and as interactive as possible. So feel free at any stage, at any point during the session, feel free to bring in your contributions, your questions, your comments, your reflections. You can do that by using the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. If you click on reactions, then raise hand, or by putting your contribution, thought, question in the chat box in either English or Arabic, and then we will pick it up from there. Having taken care of the housekeeping announcements at the beginning, I'm very happy to move into the heart of the session today. And first of all, let me say a very warm thank you to Grace Steffan, who has agreed to join us today and to lead the first part of the session. Grace is now working at the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees in Geneva, where she is the lead analyst and she is the principal drafter of the Global Compact of Refugees Indicator Report. She has a wide experience on indicators and statistics related to sustainable development and human rights. She has long experience with the UN Office on Human Rights, where she served as the lead analyst and principal drafter of the report to the Human Rights Council, and the first ever statistical analysis on the number of conflict-related deaths in the Syrian conflict. So she has worked a lot on building up the OHCHR framework on human rights indicators and the human rights-based approach to data. used as tools to measure and assess human rights progress and evidence for human rights analysis for all population groups in both development work and humanitarian response. So she really embodies this idea of the humanitarian and development nexus in a way with her background and her experience. So Grace, thank you very much for joining us today. I will let you take the floor directly, share your screen if you're comfortable doing that. And thank you very much for joining us today. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Miki, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone. I think it depends on where you're joining us. So I will be sharing my screen, and I hope you can see my presentation. And please feel free to interrupt me. I don't see you now because I have the presentation on. I have it in presentation mode, but please feel free to interrupt me if I speak too fast or if there's anything you want to clarify. So I worked as a senior statistics and data analysis officer at UNHCR, and as Nikki mentioned, my lifelong career has really been inclusion through data. And so I'm very happy that for this training, we could have a short session on the role of data, especially when we discuss such an important topic as access to decent work for refugees and other displaced populations. So I thought we could start a little bit just by looking at our everyday life, because sometimes when we talk about data statistics, we immediately get scared that it might be too technical discussion, too boring. And so I thought maybe we take a few minutes just to realize how much we actually use data in our everyday life. So I have here a very short video, a day in the life of a bear. And I want you to look at this video closely. And after that, to tell me if you see some examples of data, indicator, or information that is being used in this video. So I'm just going to play it now, and I hope you can see it clearly and hear it as well. Yeah, so at this point, I mean, anyone feel free to unmute yourself and tell me, did you see anything or examples of the use of data in this video?
And as Marion is saying in the chat, you can either take the floor directly, reflecting on what you have just seen, or you can use the chat box if you are not in a position to open your microphone for any reason, and so on. So any example of the use of data or specific indicators that you saw throughout this short video?
Shall we use you, Mickey, as our sacrifice? So, Mickey, tell me an example of a use of data that you saw.
I saw that the bear was driving at 90 miles per hour and referring to the little radar on the car dashboard as a reference. But at the same time, he said they seemed to like my driving, but it didn't really have any baseline or any comparison for that. So that would be my answer.
Good, thanks, Mickey. So yeah, that's actually a good example of a quantitative and a qualitative indicator, right? So we just don't notice it, but we use it everyday lives to make decisions. So in this case, it's a very important decision because it will help us to be safe on the road. So the qualitative aspect of it is that our passengers seem to like our driving, so they feel safe driving with us. I see also, I think an answer in the chat. So it's in Arabic. So
Yes, can I ask
Yeah.
maybe?
Yes,
Thank
it's
you.
the number of emails. The answer
yes,
is
The
the number
number
of
of
emails.
emails.
yes,
Thank you.
correct. Number of emails. So actually that's very important, right? Because at work, when we make decisions, so for example, just a simple decision that if I want to ask for my leave, um, if you see your boss having lots of emails, looking already very busy, that tells you like, I should probably wait for another time to ask for my leave because then you get better chances of getting it approved. So we just don't notice it, but we use it a lot in our decisions. What about in the what the bear was wearing that day? Yeah, we see another reply.
And it also says there's a huge number of emails.
Okay, yes. Anyone else? I think it was what he was wearing. He started it when he woke up, what he was wearing and what he for breakfast. So any ideas there of indicators he used? The food being cooked. Thanks, Iswari. Yeah, so I think he used different indicators in that scene. Also qualitative, looking at the smell, looking at how the looked like to tell us, to tell him if it's ready to be eaten. So number of emails referring to a busy day, correct? And even just the waking up, right? He had an alarm clock which showed it's 7 o'clock. So that told him that it's time to start the day. And it also tells him how much time he has to prepare. Um, yes, using the data from his dashboard is indicating the speed and also checking the weather. So he's noticed that it was raining and it told him that it's going to be a rainy day and it makes him prepare what to wear that day. So
I think you're muted, Grace. I think you accidentally muted yourself.
sorry about that. Okay.
No worries.
Yeah, so I was just saying that, so this is just a very simple introduction to make us think about how we actually use data in our everyday life and how useful it is to make decisions. So in fact, we use indicators in different ways. So for finding trends, patterns, insights, and observations, they can help us, um, understand a broader understanding of the topic. We can also visualize data to help us engage in a larger audience. And then if we use the insights and observations that we get from this data, we could transform that knowledge into actions. So if I want to quote my favorite poet, Maya Angelou. She had a poem called Equality. And in that poem, she asked the question, if it's I'm just a shadow to you, how would you understand me? And I think in this area of forced displacement, refugee, internally displaced people, if we do not have a understanding of their experiences, so not just the demographics, like how many they are, but their everyday experiences, the social economic indicators. How are they doing when it comes to health, education, and of course, our topic here, work, it will be really hard for us to understand them. And that creates more this othering or like we will have a hard time understanding them. And so for me in my work, so like I said, it's really inclusion through data. It's not just technical and all of that, but it's also advocacy. It's trying to make what would otherwise be invisible population visible, so that we include them in our discussions and we include them when we design policy. So maybe very briefly, I wanted to just say that indicators is like a swimming pool. And so we need data to understand and to produce indicators. And so this is a very brief overview of some of the sources of data that we could use. So for example, we could, for my work, especially before I worked also in National Statistics Office in the Philippines, a lot of our data sources are actually, you know, surveys and censuses, experiments, expert assessments, or we can even use focus group discussions. So these are like sources that were created specifically for statistical purposes. So each of these sources, they will have their strengths and weaknesses. And as producers and users of data, it's very important that we understand their strengths and weaknesses. So for example, surveys and census, very good sources because they, you know, you have to understand the errors. They're quite representative, but they're also very expensive to produce. And sometimes it's difficult to get timely data because it's so expensive and time consuming to produce using this data source. And so other sources that we would have would be administrative data. And so now, for example, increasingly, we're also starting to use social media or the internet. So that's the web scrape data, although sometimes because they're not following kind of like a statistical design, when they are collected, it's kind of hard for us to interpret the data and to know who is included and who is excluded in that data collection. So like I said, so a lot of administrative data. So for example, in our topic right now on decent work, that's a useful source because it really covers our population groups, our target group. So for example, if we get the data from Ministry of Labor and all their records, so that would be what we call an administrative data. But when it comes to survey data, so instead of covering that entire population, what the survey does is actually just get a sample of population, and from that sample, they can represent and help us make inferences and understand better our general population. So for example, we can have a sample of refugees and asylum seekers out of the entire population to understand their experiences. So why is that useful? That's useful because if we want to understand and compare, for example, the experiences. So for example, here in, we will see if we want to compare the experience of the refugees and asylum seekers with the members of the host community or with the national population, so that would be useful. And that also allows us to disaggregate. So I'm sure you hear a lot this disaggregation, which is basically, you know, collecting data that allows us to compare and understand different groups. And so all the relevant characteristics, so by their status, so are they refugees, are they host community, or are members of the national population, their age, their sex, and so other characteristics that would be useful for our analysis. And so sometimes that would require to oversample certain population groups. So for example, if our want to understand their access to decent work, then we have to oversample refugees and asylum seekers. And so as I have said, I mean, as we have realized in that with that video, data, indicators, they're actually very important in our everyday life. And I think that also reflects in our other aspects of society. So in the issue of refugees, we had the Global Compact on Refugees. So this is basically a framework where the international community got together and they set out what would we mean predictable and equitable responsibility sharing. And that would provide a sustainable solution to refugee situation, and how they as an international community achieve that. And even in this Global Compact on Refugees, they also emphasize the importance of data and the importance of using that data to understand the situation of refugees. So there is a paragraph in the compact that says that the success under the Global Compact will be assessed in terms of progress towards the achievements of its 4 objectives, and I will present to you the 4 objectives of the compact, and indicators and data will be used to monitor that progress. So since the adoption of the compact in 2018, we have actually developed a Global Compact on Refugees indicator framework. So this is through a series of consultations with member states, with all the different stakeholders, of course, importantly, refugee population. And that framework is the basis of the Global Compact on Refugees Indicator Report, which is released every 2 years. And that's really to measure the progress. So to let the international community know what has been achieved and how far away they are from the vision of the compact. So the framework, we have also updated it in 2022 based on our learnings when we released the first report in 2021. And we had the second Global Compact on Refugees Indicator Report released in November last year. So the compact has 4 objectives. So one is on easing pressure from host countries. 2 is enhancing refugee self-reliance. 3, expanding access to third country solutions. And 4, support conditions in countries of origin for return in safety and dignity. So all equally important objectives of the compact. But for our topic here today, the relevant objective would be enhancing refugee self-reliance. So one of the outcome of that objective is that refugees are able to actively participate in the social and economic life of host countries. And so to measure that outcome, we have developed 2 indicators. So one is on the proportion of refugees who have access to decent work by law. And then another one, an accompanying indicator, because of course, in order for refugees to have access to decent work, they should be allowed to move freely within the host country. So I will be speaking about this indicator on the proportion of refugees who have access to decent work by law with you today. That's also the data that we have collected and have included in the 2 Global Compact on Refugees indicator report. So it is quite ambitious, that indicator, because actually, even for access to decent work of the national population, we do not have a kind of like a data collection, just because the concept of decent work, as you all know, and you probably know better than me, is very broad, and it includes a lot of aspects that it's very difficult. Although I think we have the methodological guidance on how to collect data, it's just very difficult to do that. So some of the limitations of this data that we have in the report is that we only, at the moment, so even though it's progressive, we start with measuring 3 components of decent work. And so we measure, we basically look at the laws of countries and do the assessment on 3 aspects. So wage earning employment, self-employment, and workplace protection. So that's the first limitation of our data. Second, it is based on expert analysis. I mean, it is quite useful, I think, but what would have been a stronger methodology is to really measure directly the experience by asking the refugee population. But at the moment, that is not possible for us to do. So the data that we have is based on an assessment by UNHCR, so the refugee agency subject matter experts, and they base that assessment on our administrative and legal records. So they basically look at the legal records, policies, regulations in a country, and then we have a series of questionnaires pertaining to these 3 aspects, so wage earning employment, self-employment, and workplace protection, and then they do their assessment. So there is also a limitation in the comparability of the data due to changes in the methodology. And like I said, also limitation because this is an expert, or even though we have tried to put in our methodology ways to ensure objectivity in the measure in the assessment. And the coverage for our last report in 2022, we have data available for 99 countries covering 32 million refugees. So despite that limitation, I mean, I think I could say just in summary that our finding for the report, we have seen sustained progress in the 4 GCR objectives, especially when it came to education and economic inclusion. So that's including access to decent work, and so resettlement and complementary pathways. But the burden of hosting the refugees remained highly inequitable, and there is a need for accelerated action and scaled up efforts across all the 4 objectives with a broader support base. So for example, you will see here that we found that in 2022, 80% of the world's refugee population are being hosted by countries that count only 19% of the world's income. And so here I wanted to present to you the some of the data that we have in the report. And so Miki, you let me know how am I doing on time. But this is a short quiz, only 2 questions that I have. And so I ask you please to scan the QR code. So if you have your phone with you, or you can also go to menti.com and you enter this code 18691583, and that would lead you to the very short quiz. So this is the data that we have for the report. I see some thumbs up signs, so I'm assuming that you are able to scan. So now,
yes, and just for the participants, just a little reminder, this is very similar to the tool that we've used in past webinars in this course, which was called Slido. So the way that it works is the same. As Grace said, if you have a smartphone nearby, you can scan the QR code with the smartphone camera, or you can open any browser page and just type menti.com and then enter the code that is highlighted on the screen.
Okay, thanks, Mickey. So let's see. Let's go to the first question. So there's the QR code is still here. So if you still can scan that if you're still not able to do that. So in 2022, blank % of refugees had full access in law. So remember our definition only wage employment, self-employment, and social protection. So to the labor market. And so this is data that we have from 99 countries covering 32 million refugees. Okay, so I see some colleagues says 11%, 67%, one said 67%, 3, 22%, and 1, 50%. So let's wait a few more. We have 10 answers. So I think we're 26, right? In the call. So let's see.
And I would say, same as what we did last time, if you're having trouble connecting, you can also just type your answer in the chat. We can take a look from there. That's also okay.
Okay.
And I know it won't show up in the moving bars on the screen, but we can still take it from there.
Okay. So yeah, more. We have 13 responses. So yeah, so this is by law. Okay, so shall I show the correct answer? I think, or would you like me to wait a few more seconds?
I think that's okay. I think you can go.
Okay. So it's actually 67%. I know a lot of, I don't see you now on my screen, but I probably see a lot of shocked faces. So remember, it is by law and only the 3 aspects. It was wage employment, self-employment, and protection. And I think the reason for this mostly was that in 2022, actually 24% of refugees came from high in middle income countries. So it's a huge number of the refugees were Ukrainian refugees who moved to neighboring European countries who have better law when it comes to access to work, so not decent work in this sense, access to work, and I think that pushed up the numbers, but that's by law. So now let's see if there's any difference between the law and and practice. So this time in 2023, so no, blank % of refugees have unrestricted access in practice to formal employment. So how many % of refugees you think had access to formal employment in 2023? So again, it's covering 99 countries, 30 million refugees. And again, it's based on an expert assessment by UNHCR colleagues. Okay, so we have 4 say 45%, 3 said 18, 1 said 38%, and 2 participants said 22%. So we have 11 responses in. And Mickey, let me know. I should show the answer.
Yes, we have 12 now. We had 13 earlier.
Okay.
I don't see anything in the chat, so I think you can go.
Okay, so it is 45%. So again, maybe a lot of shocked faces in there, but let me stop sharing. What we actually found is that using the same survey expert assessment, an increase in the access to formal employment. So I think we started doing that survey in 2018 where we had only 18% and we saw progress in 2023. It went up to 43%. Again, explained mostly because we have more refugees that are hosted by high and middle income countries. So yeah, so I think that was my last this is actually my last slide, Mickey. It's just to encourage colleagues to access the report. This is the QR code you can access, or you can go to our website on the report. Well, you get more information on the other 4 objectives of the compact that I shared with you. So over to you, Mickey.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you very much for this presentation, for keeping it interactive, but also for adding a bit of a twist to the way that we normally look at data. We normally think about data, as we said at the beginning, as usually as more of a technical concern. But I think you really brought to light the potential for deeper and more meaningful inclusion through the correct collection and analysis of data. So thank you very much for that. I see that there is a question in the Q&A box from Eswati, and I'm wondering, Eswati, if you would like to take the floor and put your question forward directly. If you can hear us.
Yeah.
Thank
Hello,
you.
can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so my question was, I think in your slides you had mentioned that I think it was on the expert analysis when you spoke about the challenges. So I just wanted to know whether the assessment by UNHCR, based on administrative and legal records of the UNHCR, is that based on self-reporting by countries? The administrative and legal records. So like, is that the issue? Like there's less reliability then because it's based on self-reporting? That's it. That was my question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Iswari. So it is not only based on self-reporting. A lot of these policies and law are actually publicly available documents. So we have access, so our staff have access to that. And so I think it's just methodological wise. I think we've seen it in other topics. So for example, on corruption, when you have an expert assessment and then compare it to a survey where you ask directly the population of their experience of corruption, so you will always have that discrepancies. And so in this case, it's hard for us to know if the experts are more stringent in their analysis. In this case, for the legal one, probably not. But when it comes to the experience one, the de facto, the second data that I shared with you. And so for us, of course, what would be a stronger methodology is to move to direct surveys of the refugee population. That's something that we're working together with ILO, so that in the future we could also complement our reporting and strengthen it a bit more by getting direct responses from refugee population.
Hey, thank you so much. Your presentation was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both, Eswati, for posing the question, and thank you, Grace, for your response. I wonder if there are any other questions at this stage for Grace about her presentation, about her recent experience, about any of the points that were raised during the presentation. You have the chance to maybe ask them now, either in the chat box or by raising your hand. And then we will move to the second part of the session, but I understand Grace is going to stay online for a little while further. So should any questions come up again in the discussion from now on, feel free to also ask them maybe a little bit later. For the moment, I don't see a lot happening on the screen or in the chat box, so maybe we can move to the next part of the session that we had planned for today, and going back again to the initial point that Grace had made about working towards inclusion through data as a way of telling a story that would otherwise have remained unheard and making visible what up to that point may have remained invisible and making sure that it's included and it's heard in a meaningful way. So to sort of further this agenda, to push it a little bit further in our session today, we have invited two other guest speakers, as I said at the beginning, Silsila, Mahboub, and Buhendwa, Iragi. So Silsila is originally from Afghanistan, and she's currently living in Bulgaria, where she has lived for more than 8 years. She is a student of economics. She's a writer, an entrepreneur, and a singer as well. Silsila is working as an activist with different organizations to help refugees in the process of integrating into the local community, the host community. And she is also community manager in the Refugee Advisory Board, and she has been with us in previous edition of the course as well. So Silsila, it's a pleasure to have you back on board with us, and thank you for joining. Buhendwa Iragi is from Congo originally, and he is a research assistant at the Refugee-led Research Hub at the Refugee Studies Center in the University of Oxford, and is currently based in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. His research interests revolve around refugee access to rights and to durable solutions. He has had experience working for Amnesty International, focusing on advocacy, campaign, and research on refugees and migrants. But he is also the co-founder of RUSEP, which is a refugee-led organization based in Kenya that promotes youth innovation, art, talent, entrepreneurship, and research. And Buhendwa, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and for being here today. So wanted to start the discussion with you both today by asking a question that is addressed again to both of you. And I wanted to know, you both have an experience of displacement. So I wanted to ask you, how has this experience as a refugee influenced your perspective on the importance of access to decent work and integration into the local communities and the local labor market? Were there any specific challenges that you faced during your own integration process that served as a spark, as an inspiration to push you in your work to help others also navigate similar obstacles? So what was the spark, the inspiration that came from your own experience? And I will ask maybe Silsila to go first, and then I will pass the floor to Buhendwa, if that's okay with you. Thank you both. And Silsila, you have the floor.
Hello, thank you so much. Thank you for today to having me here, and I'm really glad to have chance to back this year also to be one of the speakers. Regarding to your question, well, I think everyone choose different way of. Everyone regarding to their own situation, they have different things that inspire them. For me personally, things that inspired me is one of my following my dreams, because this was the only reason that gave me to continue for doing what I want to do, and to be also a good helper, let's say, or a good example for other people who are displaced and they want to continue their life in a new country, because you're going to start from zero, and starting from zero is not that easy. You need to be strong enough to follow your dreams, to follow your pathway for a better change for yourself and people after you, and people at the same time that they are coming for a better life, for integration in another country. For me, as I said, my dreams were very the inspiration for me, my dreams, and of course the people around me who helped me to get to that, who really give me this energy, who told me you can do it. Yes, of course we cannot be perfect in any time, but they give me this energy that you are strong enough to follow your dreams, you're strong enough to help other people at the same time. And when I started to follow the steps for my dream or for my life, I saw that now it's time that I can do for other people as well, because I saw this ignorance. I faced the ignorance. I faced the from how far you come, that much people ignore you. I saw that if you're sitting down and you're just waiting somebody come to you to help you, it's not going to happen, and you will be just ignored regarding to your religion, regarding to your looks, regarding to your color of skin. So to ignore all these, I needed to step for myself, and these steps really helped me to build my life where I am today. I'm really happy that right now I'm facing or meeting a lot of young people younger than me, that they are newly in the country, and they knew about me, and they are very interested to meet and to know and how I can help them, if it will be just some suggestions or not advice, but just suggestions or some giving them the contacts I have. This gives me the feeling or the power that, okay, it means you did something, which is right now you're seeing the benefit from it, which means there is people looking for that lines or the way you choose for yourself. Then this is it. Yes.
Thank you, Silsila. So it's really a testimony of the importance to, so you sort of felt the push to step in, to fill in a gap that you perceived when you were facing these same challenges and obstacles yourself, and trying to model that spirit and that self-reliance and that initiative that you saw in yourself, and try to model it for other people in the same situations as well. So thank you very much for that. Buhendwa, can I ask you then the same question about how your own experience has influenced your perspective on the role of distant work and its importance for integration? And were there any specific challenges that sort of inspired you to try and help other people in the same situation as you? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Miki. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be here. It's my first time. And yeah, so to the question, I'll try and be a bit fast. I've been a refugee and like in Kenya for 25 years, actually more than that, because I just moved to Canada last year. And I was in Kenya since 1999, the 1999, together with the family. Kenya has really made some good strides, some really nice steps to, like giving refugees this space for safety, and like just basically hosting them in big numbers. I had the privilege to live in Nairobi, and not in the camp. And really, I would say that I could see my dreams unfolding before me. I was really passionate about going to school. So that was one motivation, that I had access of, accessing education. And that really sparked, like a dream in me, that I want to see how this knowledge will help me and will help my family. Just basically looking at the dynamics of my parents, they had qualifications from the DRC, and it was really difficult for them to get opportunities within Nairobi. But now here is a privilege and an advantage that I can, get involved, get school orientation from Nairobi, and perhaps that would pave a pathway for me into employment. So really that was the backdrop. And so I got scholarships. So like I got like several scholarships, thanks to the good work also being done by different humanitarian organizations in Nairobi. And I was able to go all the way to the university, and I finished my undergraduate very with very good expectations and very high motivations that I'll get quick access to the opportunities. I'll just get into the competitive space. So only for me to get into now the phases of challenges. So I didn't know about the work permit requirements, and this really was something that was quite frustrating. So I finished my university. I apply for a few opportunities, and only to be told that you'd need a work permit even on an internship level and a volunteership level. You'll just basically be required to have a work permit. And the work permit was important because that would, the basic support you'll get, like transportation facilitation, some lunch money that as you're working as a volunteer will have to go through the bank, and for you to access the financial services they require you to provide a work permit, which will be accompanied with Kenya Revenue Authority, like a tax pin. And so the complication starts getting compounded. Like there are so many series of documents that you really need. And this makes your whole experience really difficult. Like you'd want to settle into a role, but it's also very risky for both your employer and yourself just being in that space, because you don't have all the requirements. And your employer really can't get involved because there are certain restrictions, and so that makes the whole experience very difficult. So I tried chasing down a few documents here and there, get into different offices, and those difficulties really couldn't like yield much, so, and that experience and frustration made me lose so many opportunities, because now without these documents, without these basic facilitations, no one will be readily, be out there to like just have you on board into their workspace. So my work with Amnesty was really very short. It was my first opportunity, and it was really very short term because I couldn't basically get all these facilitations to like allow me to continue working and just being making use of my knowledge and being self-reliant. And that really sparked something in me, that there are so many barriers, there are so many things that really need to be addressed, because there are so many refugees who have the same fire in them, that we've been getting access to education, and we've been putting in the work to like be excellent at it, and we can compete equally in the same space and access opportunities. But then there are all these barriers that we really need to navigate, and no one is really addressing these issues. It's like no one has that courage to step out and say, there's this challenge, there's this barrier, and how can we fix it? How can we address it? So that sparked the interest for me to like just get into advocacy, like share my experience, basically like get involved in these spaces where we can advocate, share our challenges, and see how different areas of challenges can be bridged. So, and alongside that, it was also trying to network with the host community, just trying to see what can be done at the level of opportunities that I can access. So one being looking at basically the host community friends that I had, and seeing how we can leverage on their legal status because they are citizens, to see how we can collaborate together and have and pursue common interests. So, and that also drove me into setting up an NGO within Kenya together with some colleague friends. And we had to register it through my Kenyan friends, colleagues. So that because also with all the barriers, it's just getting into the locally available opportunities. And so through those spaces, I've been able to like try and mobilize, try and get involved in different activities and initiatives to see how refugees can find their space into accessing decent work. Yeah, so.
Thank you, Buhendwa. Thank you for making this, let's say, this link between access to education as a way to access employment, as a way to in turn sort of strengthen or promote the integration process at the local level, which I think was really interesting. And of course, you raised the point of the frustration and a little bit even the surprise in finding out this work permit requirement. This is something that we've talked about in previous sessions, something that I'm sure will come back again. Again, linked to the idea of using education opportunities as an entry point. We'll come back in the discussions that we'll have in the following days, and especially in the face-to-face component here in Turin. So so thank you for sharing that and for sharing this again, this idea of this inspiration of trying to facilitate the work for other people in the same situation as you, to make sure that that the narrative around hosting refugees can also be shifted, no, and then allowing them to realize their full potential in a way that highlights how they can be an asset for the host community rather than a burden. So I think these were interesting points, and I thank you for that. And I think all of us here today, I think we all agree on the fact that it is absolutely crucial to ensure that refugees and displaced populations can have a voice, can have a say in discussions around policies that would then translate into decision and practices and procedures that directly affect their lives. So my questions to you, Buhendwa, and to Silsila in turn, based on your experience, based on your work and the advocacy that you've been doing and the activities that you've been carrying on, what would you say are some concrete steps at a smaller scale, at a larger scale, but concrete steps that can be taken to enhance and facilitate the meaningful participation and the inclusion of refugees and forcibly displaced persons in the decision-making processes at different levels? And maybe I will start with you, Buhendwa, this time, and then I will go back to Silsila later. Thank you.
Thank you, Miki. Yeah, like, so the whole idea of meaningful participation is really quite interesting and timely, especially just based on the different events that have been happening post-COVID or fast forward. Like just looking at this space, refugees really have been tokenized for the longest time. So you're looking at meaningful participation in the sense where refugees are only brought on board in the very last stages when everything has already been done from the preparation phase to the last phases. So, and just that becomes a problem within decisions and policies that are being created for refugees. Like you want to see meaningful participation as refugees being involved from the inception phases of decisions that affect them being drafted, all the way to even the follow-up or mechanisms in terms of the implementation and the follow-up mechanisms that comes up later in terms of evaluations. But based on my experience, refugees are almost always left out until we are into the implementation phases or the last phases of the decision-making processes. And this really becomes not meaningful, if I would use that word, for the refugees. And it's really something that we would say from our end, like just use that as an alibi of participation, but actually not meaningful participation. So what we can do really is see refugees as being the center of every decision that is being taken from them, like just being the center of inclusion. So from the drafting phases, we want to see refugees being involved. We would like to see refugees just being in those spaces where ideas are being drafted, ideas or policies or programs are about to be drawn and they're about to be implemented or taken within refugee communities. So one is just looking at the whole landscape. Refugees should be part and parcel from the inception phase. So you are looking at a situation where refugee is supported financially to come into the spaces where discussions and dialogues are happening. The refugee is also being prepared for such sessions for their meaningful contribution. I've been in spaces where I can't even meaningfully say a word or like just give an input, because I've been brought into a space where it's the last, almost the last phase of the discussions, and really you are not even privy to the conversations or the entire process. And this really becomes frustrating because you end up in a space that you really feel like you don't fit, and you really feel excluded entirely. And that becomes really, really frustrating. Refugees also should be seen in terms of their the troubles and the landscapes as well that come with it. So there is this inclusion that only happens in the spaces where refugees probably can be accessed by the different organizations or different actors that are into programming or policy and decision making. And so many refugees in the outskirts are left, where a lot of these decisions are taking shape in terms of informing practice. So there's really that a call for intentionality, that when we want to involve refugees, we want to be all inclusive, despite their locations, despite their gender, despite their barriers. Like there could be language barriers in some instances, but here is a situation where you are involving a refugee into in terms of policies, but you really don't want to facilitate them into being part and parcel of understanding how these processes were done. So refugees will only interact with policies that they are quite not really versed with in terms of their existence and how they benefit or how they transform their lives. So basic facilitation into ensuring that even refugees can get information, can get access to these spaces also in the languages that they can understand, and in ways that they can really feel that they are treated with dignity and the respect that is basic for every human. Another one in terms of meaningful inclusion is there are so many organizations that are doing meaningful work with refugees, actually for refugees, but not having refugees within these organizations. So like just looking at the professional landscape, there is so much that is happening in terms of skills and education, educating refugees. But there's so little that is also being done in terms of having these refugees who are skilled, these refugees who've become professionals in spaces of work. And these really becomes a challenge. You have a very large number of refugees who can only mobilize at their level. But there are so many programs that are being done for them that they are not even part of in terms of leadership, in terms of professional engagement. And that mainstreaming is lacking. So we really need to see how, for instance, different organizations having refugee professionals also just mainstreamed into the meaningful work that they are doing professionally. Yeah, so I can go on, but maybe for the sake of time, let me just, leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we will have the chance to also come back to this later. But I think once again, I think you made some excellent points about inclusion. For the inclusion to be meaningful, it has to be intentional, and it has to happen at the different stages and not just at the end of the development process. And also, I like this idea that you made, the point that you raised at the end of this idea of working for refugees, but not often working with refugees. So not really bringing them into the fold and making sure that there is a space, that we are allowing space for their initiative, for their leadership, and for their professional engagement, which can also obviously go through the provision of decent work and the access to decent work. So thank you very much for that. Silsila, I see that you have turned your camera on, so I will go back to you a little with the same question. So in your experiences in the different initiatives that you have been involved in, what were some of the concrete steps that you maybe have seen to enhance meaningful participation of refugees in decision making, or what were maybe some of the gaps that you encountered, or the challenges that you encountered that you can talk to? Thank you.
Hello again. Regarding, I will go first to the challenges and then to goals. We had, I'm member of European Coalition, which is a refugee lead organization for refugees and migrants. Before last year, we had a we call it Berlin Submit, which was a really big gathering of more than 100 refugee lead organizations from all Europe, all around Europe. We gathered together. The point of this meeting or submit was to write or note all the suggestions from all refugee lead organizations, which the idea was all these suggestions will go to the European Parliament for policymakers, let's say. If I talk about challenges, gathering all that many refugees in Germany, because it was in Berlin, it was a really big challenge for people who organized it, because I was also part of organizing, but like big part was the funding. We had a lot of problem for finding that funding for it. And the problem was that for 1 year we could not submit the report of the meeting, report of that conference, which was really hard and difficult, I can say, because a lot of people, really good ideas, good suggestions, which was really exactly the needs of refugees, because all the people we were there were experienced the displacement in person, not like somebody else is telling them or explaining to them what is to be a displaced person, but it was a personal experience that everybody was sharing, and the problems and how we can solve the challenges. All this, unfortunately, we waited 1 year to just draft the report and then to submit it to policymakers. I can say that it's not that easy to give these reports for the policymakers. It's not that easy to reach those people because usually we have been ignored. These voices always have been aired here between refugee lead organizations or other organizations that they are working with refugees. But these messages not going to the policymakers, let's say. But of course, there is always some good examples, I can say, or there is some policymakers or some people that are on the high level, let's say, are putting this attention to know about it more, to follow what we are doing. But still we have this problem that refugee lead organizations are not being known as a perfect organization, or as a organization that they can be partner with them, to work with them, to work with other refugees. Because to be more clear, refugees who pass this all way, they can easily find a person who never experienced displacement, cannot understand you in the way we do understand, cannot understand the challenges, cannot give you a faster solution, let's say, or cannot help you even also here is easier to talk about your problems, to explain your problem more than more than is being translated to another language, because sometimes you feel more comfortable to speaking on your own language, explaining your problems, but not there should be a third person to be translated, because this is taking out the comfort of the sharing the information about your personal life, let's say. Yes, I think it's very if we are going to have more chance to be part of policy changes, I think it is going to be helpful, at least how as our colleague said, at least to put our notes, like to put our marks. Okay, this is what we think is good to use. This is we think will be more helpful. Not to, of course, nobody is going to change all the policy because 2-3 words that we are sharing, but still they can take the important points that can bring change for everyone, not for one or two, three people, not for one nationality, group of nationality people that are displaced, not, or if we just talk about what happened when what happened to another phase of behaving with the refugees, which was really not nice in a because they showed, all the countries showed the difference that Ukrainian refugees are more than welcome, but other refugees are not that welcome. Here, it's not about being racist. It's not about being, I say that they were not in problem.
Silsila, I think your connection is breaking up.
So people decide to move when they have problem. But it was Afghanistan was in hand of Taliban. But and then at the same time to Gaza.
Silsila, I think your connection is breaking up and we have a bit of a hard time hearing you. So I don't know if maybe turning your camera off might help, but at the moment you are frozen and we cannot hear you anymore. But just to pick up on a couple of the points that you were raising, and hopefully you can still hear me. But I think you made an excellent connection with the points that were made before about how the inclusion needs to be intentional, but sometimes even in the face of the right intention in the right place, sometimes practical concrete barriers may prevent that meaningful inclusion, that intentional inclusion from really happening in practice. And you gave your example. And I think one of the other important points that you raised, and I think Silsila may have lost the connection now because I don't see her online anymore, which is unfortunate. One of the points that Silsila also raised, and that I think we are all aware of, and that came out also in previous editions of the course, is the idea of the different types of discriminations that displaced persons often can face, and these can be sometimes very easily noticeable from the surface. So distinctions based on gender, distinctions based on maybe background, skill level, education level, but sometimes also on the country of origin, as we have seen the widely different response that, at least in the, let's say, in the public narrative, in the public opinion, there has been to different displacement crises, especially in Europe. So thank you, Silsila, for that. I'm going to pause for a moment now and see if there are any questions or any points that the colleagues in the room, that the participants in the room may also want to bring up. Any questions for our two guests? If any of you has any questions or contributions or experiences that they would also like to share, you can do so by raising your hand using the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, or just putting something in the chat and we can pick it up from there. We still have a few minutes. If anyone would like to contribute. I know that within the pool of participants, we have representatives of refugee-led organizations, persons that have had concrete experiences and direct experiences. So if they are online, I don't see the full list of online participants at the moment, but if they are online and they would like to also contribute, of course, we'd be happy to hear from them. I was trying to make my invitation a little bit longer to see, sort of break the ice and to speak. If anyone wanted to contribute or to ask any questions to our two speakers, Buhendwa and Silsila, who I think is back online at the moment. So Silsila, thank you, and sorry for the connection issues as well. So if there aren't any questions from the chat and from the raise hands in the in the public. Let me then ask one final question to sort of conclude the discussion for today. And we've been focusing a lot on your experience, so looking a little bit backwards, your experience up to this point. Let's maybe try and look at the future now. If we were to look ahead at this stage, how do you see, based on the information that we have today, based on the also on the instruments and the tools that we have available today, how do you see the role of refugees evolving when it comes to actively shaping policies and initiatives that are targeted to facilitating access to decent work and facilitating their integration from now, looking at the future? And Buhendwa, I'll pass the floor to you, and then we can see if Silsila is able to also come back later. Thank you, Buhendwa.
Yeah, thank you, Miki. Yeah, so there's so much work that is currently being done for refugees to like see progress and a lot of success in their inclusion and participation. So I would look at the future of refugees in this space and in the space of participation generally and inclusion as a promising one, basically. There's different organizations, different governments that are really taking a step, and a good step, to ensure that refugees are into advisory boards, for example. Refugees are into the UNHCR boards as well. And also refugees are being consulted, even when at times it's happening marginally, they're being consulted. But already the space has been opened for refugees to engagement, to be meaningfully engaged into making decisions, being part and parcel of making decisions. So I see a future where refugees are mobilizing from the ground, like locally, just based on the challenges that they are facing. I see refugees really taking steps and opportunities out of these challenges to ensure that they are able to, meaningfully engage into these spaces and these conversations and dialogues that are happening for them and on their behalf. So refugees really, with the knowledge they're accessing right now and with the empowerment that is also happening in different spaces to different refugee fora, I'm also seeing refugees really coming out strongly to share freely their perspectives. And these really, it's basically to see how this can be done in a safe manner, because right now I would say refugees are participating in spaces, but they are also very cautious because of their identity and their label. There are so many risks that comes with free participation, I would say so. So when you fast track that into the spaces where now there's refugee assurance of safety in terms of their participation, assurance of protection, also in terms of the sharing of their experiences. I'm looking at that gap, assuming that can be bridged, then we can get to the depth of engagement that is really meaningful and is really progressive. I'm saying that because I know there are refugees that don't really feel that there are things they're supposed to voice out, just based on the fact that voicing out issues could somehow affect their status in their different countries that they are based. Could also affect their participation in different forums. Refugees that also would want to get into these spaces feeling motivated, feeling safe, and feeling as if they're equal partners into finding solutions. And so we are looking at a situation where if all these gaps are bridged, then a lot really can happen in terms of progressive change and progressive inclusion that we can really call meaningful, because there are challenges locally or nationally. There are challenges also at the global level, but more generally, we would say also that there is progress that is being done to bridge these challenges. And so once these challenges are bridged, then we would see better involvement in the policy dialogues and discussions, and we will see also quality in terms of input, because that is also lacking. And we are looking at participation basically in terms of numbers, but we just want to also see how this participation can be meaningful in terms of quality of input from the refugees themselves. So assuming that all these obstacles will be behind us, then fast forward, I see very good quality inputs from refugees out of the freedom of expression and out of the feeling of safety and protection that would come or be assured to them. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Buhendwa. Thank you also for making this this point of not just the let's say the amount of participation, but the quality of the participation as well. I see that there's a comment from Mariam in the chat. Mariam, I'm very interested because I'm just seeing some keywords in your contribution. So I'm very interested to hearing from you. But before I move to that, I wondered if Silsila can hear us and if she's online and would like to also contribute to the question. So looking at the future, how do you see the role of refugees evolving when it comes to shaping policies dedicated to decent work, to the promotion of decent work for refugees and to refugee integration in the future?
Well, if we will have more chances to be involved in all process of making policies or rules for our lives that we are integrating in other countries, I think if we will be involved in the process, it's going to be much helpful for a lot of people and a lot of generation after us. A lot of people that will decide to come and live in a safe place. Well, there are changes. We cannot close our eyes for that say no, there is no changes at all. Of course there are changes. For me, that I'm living more now 10 years, I'm living outside my country, and every year, because I stay to work on the same topic, integration of refugees, I see changes. Of course, it is very small steps. It's very small that you can. If you're looking from outside, you cannot understand that changes, but when you are so much involved in the process, you can understand the changes. There are changes right now, like we did not have a lot access to labor market. Having access to education was very difficult. Finding house or apartment to live in, it was very difficult. right now, yes, it is still difficult to have all these, but there are now easier ways. Why? Because the refugees from last years, let's say, they started to live here, they found those contacts, and now people are like mostly using the contacts, like mostly using their own community, their own network to find that help. I'm always positive, and I want to be positive that there are going to be changes. There are going to be better changes if we all really stay together, united, and also if really our voices will be heard. If they allow us, the refugee lead organizations, or even an individual person, not matter, they should or necessarily have an organization, but as an individual person that want to share their experience or they want to be part of a policy change, I think if those voices to be heard, that will be really a lot helpful, not only for refugees, but also for that country that people are living, because integration is not just for ourselves. Like if I give an example of myself, let's say, right now I have my own business as well, which is giving job space, not just for myself, but also for other people, which means we are not doing it just for ourselves, but we are also doing it for the community we are living in. We are not just helping ourselves for the integration, but we are also helping other people around us. Like, I think integration is always from both sides. If we do whatever we do from our side, if the society not accept that, so nothing is going to change. The society should not accept me because color of my skin, or because of the way I look, or because of the country I come from, but the society, if accept me, will accept me from the work, from the networking, from communication with them, from respecting their own culture, and they respect my culture, let's say. But we can be very positive. Changes will come, hopefully everywhere, for good for everyone, and not only for young generation, because for young generation it's easy to change and get find their way in a new country, but also for other people that are in different ages and it's difficult for them to get integrated. Then let's be positive.
Thank you, Silsila, and thank you, Buhendwa. It's great to actually indeed be able to close on a positive note and to look at the future with a positive attitude. So thank you for bringing that up. And I think, Silsila, you made two interesting points about the fact that you are also an entrepreneur yourself, and as such, you are helping provide job opportunities, which links to the comment that Mariam was making in the chat box, which I will get to in a minute, and also for highlighting this idea of the age and the way that age discrimination can have an impact on the possibilities for displaced persons to integrate in the local communities and in the local labor markets. And this is a point that I wanted to highlight because this is something that we're going to also focus on during the face-to-face component of the course, which will take place, as you all know, starting from next week. So regarding the role of the private sector and business owners, I'm going to read to you Mariam's comment in the chat. And because she's having some network problems, she's saying, for ease of integration, I would also like to focus on the importance of raising awareness on the importance of integration, which is provided to the private sector and to business owners to open up greater opportunities in the labor market. Because we know that often jobs are created in the private sector more easily. And this is what the International Labour Organization always seeks through the Youth for Future project. And we know we have several representatives of the project joining the session today as participants. And I see that there's another point by Gerald, again, being made in the chat about one of the issues, again, that we're going to focus on during the face-to-face component, which is the issue of working in partnerships across different agencies and different institutions. Gerald, do you want to, in 2 minutes, maybe tell us a little bit more about this?
Thank you so much. I saw it as a challenge that there is a gap in academic research in relation to policies that are being developed in Uganda in line with the refugees, where the impact of these policies and how they are implemented, it is not well searched about. And I think we have not been deliberate in supporting our country, us as agencies, to hope come up with interventions that can clearly address the issue of access to decent work by refugees and host communities, or host displaced persons, sorry. Yeah, I think if we come together and have the refugees at the center of this all, we'll be able to come up with ideas that are tailored to addressing these challenges that hamper the refugees from accessing decent work, because it's across all divides. So I think we need more of dialogues and interactions with the refugees. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you. And yes, absolutely, this idea of having refugees play a role of key stakeholders instead of just receiving, being on the receiving end of the policies and of the initiatives. I see that we have used very much all of the time that we had set aside for the session today. So in the interest of not going too much over time, I would maybe wrap up the session here. Let me once again just say a very big thank you to Buhendwa, to Silsila, and to Grace, who has stayed online with us for all this time, for their contributions and their let's say dedication to the advancement of refugee inclusion and meaningful participation. And I think having Grace as a representative of UNHCR in this, which is an ITCILO, but the International Training Center belongs to the wider umbrella of the International Labour Organization. So seeing the two agencies work together, I think, is once again another reason for hope, and seeing that we're not working in silos, but really trying to push this one UN approach and working in partnership and promoting collaboration on cross-cutting issues and approaches. So thank you all for being here today. As we said at the beginning, the recording of the session is going to be made available on the eCampus shortly after the end of the session today, together with any accompanying materials. We will see you again for the last webinar of this initial phase of the course on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock, and we will focus on the issue of extending social protection to refugees and other forcibly displaced persons and their families. And once again, we will do so with a joint panel representing UNHCR and ILO. So we will have colleagues from both organizations discussing the challenges, the approaches, and the opportunities that are involved in the extension of social protection to refugees and other forcibly displaced persons. One quick announcement. As you know, the face-to-face component of the course is going to start on Monday. So we will be sending you in the next couple of days more information on the specific agenda for the face-to-face course, the duration of the days that we will spend together, and what we have organized for you once you join us in Turin. But in order to make that happen, we need to have some clear indication about your visa status. So I know that my colleague Marion has already sent an email to all of you asking to give us an update. We have, I think, a fairly accurate picture of where we stand now, but if you have any updates on your visa situation, if you know that you are exempt from visa requirements, maybe send us a line if you haven't done that before. This will be very helpful for us to be able to adjust and tailor our agenda and our efforts accordingly. I see in the chat one big thank you to the interpreters who always do a lot of very, very precious, invaluable work behind the scenes. So thank you to the interpreters as well. We will see you again online Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Thank you all for joining us. And I see that there's one reason. Marion, yes, please.
Thank you, Miki. I will be very short. I just wanted to say, because somebody asked me already about the weather. So some of you might be preparing their suitcases. So indeed, it's spring. Sometimes it can be very hot, but next week will be a normal weather for the Turin area. It will be quite chilly in the morning and 16 to 18, 20 degrees maximum Celsius degrees. So you need to have, and also you need to bring some comfortable shoes for the study visit that we'll do one afternoon. We'll go outside and you cannot come with heels. So you need sneakers and perhaps also an umbrella might be useful for your stay. But I mean, basically the weather seems to be good, but still I wanted to give you a bit of information. Thank you very much. Thank you to all. And we see you next Thursday.
Thank you, everyone. See you Thursday. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.